So as I discussed last time for The Gathering, Babylon 5 was part of the small lineup of the Primetime Entertainment Network, combining Warner Brothers' long history of producing entertainment for both the small screen and silver screen, and the long history of Chris Craft in making plastics. This match, made by seemingly combining two companies at random, was doomed. But after Season 4, some people at TNT lobbied hard for B5 to be transferred over to this Warner Brothers cable channel. It was a pretty big gamble. B5's ratings had been pretty poor even by syndication standards, which PTN sort of was. DS9, Hercules, and Xena were consistently pulling in 5s and 6s, while B5 hovered around the 2.0 mark, which even adjusted for the fact that only 75% of those who could watch those other shows could watch B5, it's still doing pretty bad. But as I said, some people at TNT really believed in the show enough to give this whole thing a try, and in addition to giving JMS the money to produce a special edition version of The Gathering, nearly $3 million was also set aside for this film in the beginning. Science fiction shows are often given the short end of the stick by the powers that be, and as would later be noted, this network had a better grasp on westerns than it did on speculative fiction. But nevertheless, on Babylon 5, TNT promoted it aggressively.
For freedom, for freedom, for freedom, for peace, and to guard against those who would see such liberty stolen from my people. That is my purpose on Babylon 5.
He stands for honor, justice, and hope in a world where empires rise and fall with each new day. Watch Jakar on Babylon 5, premiering tomorrow night at 7, exclusively on TNT.
Besides numerous commercials announcing that it was coming months ahead of time, they also created a 30-minute special, The Guide to Babylon 5, which was made specifically for those unfamiliar with the show to get a taste of what the series was about. This special was broadcast several times, including during a marathon release of the films 2001 and 2010, with the former's broadcast being hosted by Bruce Boxleitner and Jerry Doyle. The pie-in-the-sky hope for In the Beginning was to get it up to the low 3s for ratings, but they weren't expected to do anything near that well. Well, the reverse happened. The Gathering by itself managed to exceed that. Again, we're not talking about exceeding expectations. They exceeded what the figure would be for the maximum realistic possibility. And that was for a revised version of a maligned pilot. In the Beginning did even better than that, scoring a 4.1. This was actually higher than episodes of Voyager and Buffy at this time, both of which are network shows no less, and it blew TNT's usual shows in that time slot completely out of the water, which were normally pulling in 1s here. In the Beginning not only allowed a massive sigh of relief for everyone at TNT who had pushed for this move, but it ensured the show's viability for Warner Brothers, who were producing the show while TNT was distributing it. Which is significant, not only because there would be additional B5 movies, the complete Season 5, and a spin-off series, but it allowed the show new life on cable now, both on TNT and later on the Sci-Fi Channel, which wasn't even a part of the WB family, but was nevertheless so eager to bring B5 on board that a serious effort was actually made to produce a Season 2 of Crusade before it was decided the numbers just didn't work out. But all of this likely hinged on the resounding success of In the Beginning. So, let's get down to the film and see what all this fuss was about. But first, a word of caution. I mentioned this is sort of a prequel, sequel thingy. That's because while it's tales of the events before Babylon 5 was created, it is framed by a story set much later in the universe continuity. In addition, the film contains numerous elements that were secrets for a time within the series that were later to be revealed. Generally speaking, if you were watching it in the optimized order that I have been using, that's the reason, by the way, if you're new here, that my episode listings don't correspond with those of the broadcast order. Well, you really should watch this film after the conclusion of Season 4 rather than before watching The Gathering, as the spoilers revealed would remove much of the mystery from the series. Likewise, there are lots of spoilers for B5 in this review, so you have been warned. Spoilers ahoy! The film begins with regulars discussing how one event can change everything, spoken by Delenn appropriately, given that she had made similar observations in The Gathering about the Stone Garden and its reflection of how one person can change the universe. With the introduction out of the way, we get to the framing device of the story, Centauri Prime, in the future where the capital city is burning. Two kids in the palace fart around, unaware that they've run into the throne room, where Londo sits upon the throne as the Emperor, which is cool, while his capital burns. But still, today my great accomplishment was renewing my post office box. I don't expect any statues built for that achievement. The kids find it hard to believe that this guy with the sideways mohawk is actually the Emperor, so Londo shows off his official imperial belt buckle he wears around his neck, and gives it to the boy with the power to give one order.
What do you want?
Tell me a story.
No. It's all right. You did far better with that question than I did.
This is an example of what I've been referring to. The line has more meaning when viewed looking back and realizing that Londo is referring to when Mr. Morden asked him, "What do you want?" And it led to the Shadow Wars and this sorry state of affairs for the Centauri Republic. Back with the release of The Gathering, the original broadcast, people had asked why, of all people, Londo was the one to be given the narration, given how small his role was in the pilot movie. JMS insisted at the time that there was a very important reason for why it was him, and here we see as he makes the same proclamation about being there at the dawn of the Third Age. For the humans, it was the end of one era and the beginning of another, where war led to peace, led to war, led to an even greater hope for peace. But for Londo, it's the story of a man whose lament over his stalled career would plunge so much into darkness and lead to this future. Him on the throne of a burning Centauri Prime. Or as I like to think of it, the best seat in the house! Back when Earth started making contact with the other species in the galaxy, the Centauri took a special interest thanks to the novelty of them. Londo was assigned to liaise with Earth in those days, when they had become the big dogs in the galaxy after they threw their lot in with the League of Non-Aligned Worlds to drive back the Dilgar. Hoping to ride that wave, Earth was looking for a chance to meet with the Minbari. They're very concerned that these people have a warrior caste and thus might interfere in efforts to expand Earth's influence. So Londo advises sending just one ship so as not to appear as a threat if they want to talk with them. But he warns that even at the height of their expansionism, the Centauri Republic never crossed the Minbari. But these two are convinced that if they're a problem, Earth will beat the shit out of them too. War is diplomacy considered by other means, and the best diplomacy involves a big boot with a spike on the end. The Minbari at this time are in a situation of their own. Lenan, head of the Rangers, has asked for the resources that he needs to be expanded, and what he is going to get is even better. An insult that his group is an embarrassment.
Then I demand to speak with the Grey Council.
Lenan,
It is my right as leader of the Anla Shak. I demand to see them and make my case personally.
Good luck with that. I tried to get a hearing to talk about dealing with the part of my house that was collapsing. It took 11 months just to schedule it. By the time you get an audience, Lenan, the shadows will be picking their teeth with your skull ridges. With the expected level of convenience, Lenan is summoned to the Grey Council in the middle of the night, where he is then taken aboard the ship where the Grey Council has assembled to listen to his complaining. Dukat is naturally there. He was the big head honcho at this time, a much beloved leader of the Minbari. And, the kid interrupts the story. Damn it, kid, we have narrative flow here to think about. As Londo explains that all the big warfare stuff is coming, he also offers a pre-commercial confession. Many of the deaths of that war are actually his fault. Dun dun, done that gag before. He continues his story where Lenan brings up the fact that Rangers are supposed to be on watch and ready for the shadows, but instead they lack the numbers or the support to do that, despite Valen having warned that in a time soon to come they would be returning. But Dukat points out that the reason the Grey Council is what it is, equal representation of all three castes, is to ensure that the views of no one caste are going to dominate. And while Lenan is religious and believes in this, the warriors are not convinced, especially since the Vorlons seem to have gone into hiding. Delenn speaks up, offering a compromise. Go to Zahadum and see if the shadows have returned. And Dukat plans that the Grey Council go there personally to put this matter to rest once and for all. Plus, he's been from Alpha Centauri to Zeta Epsilon. He's almost to the end of the alphabet finally. Gotta get that last one in. But that's when we see, in private, that the reason the warriors never found the Vorlons was because they didn't want to be found. Because Dukat is not surprised to discover Kosh waiting for him in Dukat's quarters. Back on Earth, we meet up with John Sheridan, first officer of the Lexington. And his father seems to be good friends with this general, so the guy's got some good news. Sheridan's getting a transfer to the Prometheus, Captain Jankowski's ship that's going to be heading for the first mission to the Minbari borders. Sheridan's unhappy about that, though, because Jankowski's such a loose cannon that Sheridan might wind up in a situation where his CO and the regs or mission requirements are at odds with each other. Speaking of questionable leadership actions, Delenn is wondering about strange secret deliveries that are being made to the ship on Dukat's orders, and deduces based on talking with him that either the Vorlons are there or soon will be there. It's quite clear from the conversation that he is her mentor and the two have a quite close relationship. Not romantically, I mean, but quite clear that there is a strong bond between the two. He's conducting the ceremony to officially induct her into the Grey Council, while the Prometheus and her escort is arriving in the same place, not expecting to find the Minbari here. And they're nervous because the scanners are being scrambled by something that those ships are doing. Jankowski was told to avoid actually making contact with the Minbari just to be on the safe side. He was just supposed to be scouting around here. But he wants to head in and get a closer look anyway, because, again, he's a bit of a loose cannon. Well, that's when things quickly go to shit. The Minbari scanners interfere with the jump engines on the Earth ships, preventing them from hauling ass out of there. The humans try to contact the Minbari, who of course can't understand them and can't respond in a way that the humans could understand, even if they did. The warrior caste's way is to approach other ships in peace by, and you're going to love this, having their gun ports open. Their reasoning is that it shows that they have nothing to hide, rather than like someone walking into a bank waving a gun around while saying, "Hey, I'd like to open a checking account that can automatically connect to my IRA." So let's recap. The Minbari ship has disabled the Earth ship's jump engines. Their scanners are interfering with the Earth ship's scanners, preventing them from detecting if weapons are locked on. They're not answering hails, and finally, they've opened up all their gun ports. Shockingly, the humans draw the conclusion that the Minbari are planning to blow them out of the sky. So they decide to fire before they get shot, and during the attack, Dukat is killed. While the humans finally are able to retreat, Delenn is overwhelmed by her grief, and the council is divided on what to do. Some want to follow and take revenge, others want to wait and figure out what happened. But this means that it's down to Delenn to split the tie. What's she gonna do?
Strike them down, follow them to the base, and kill them, all of them! All of them! No mercy!
I'm gonna put that down as a yes then, alright? The Minbari's attack is exactly as merciless as Delenn demanded, annihilating the humans. Even ships that are not capable of fighting back are destroyed. What's more, they're ignoring all attempts at communication, unless you count blowing people away as an understandable FU in any language. The way they're fighting suggests that they are approaching this with a warrior caste philosophy. Kill the warriors of their enemies first, and then exterminate the rest once that is done. This is a war of genocide. The irony of this is that the Dilgar, which they keep bringing up, wound up in the same boat thanks to humanity. It wasn't a systemic genocide, but they were forced back to and then contained on one single planet, their homeworld, and then the sun there went nova and wiped them all out. Now the humans are facing an enemy that will likely be even less merciful. When Sheridan's CO suggests that he visit his folks, it's with the implication that he should do so to say goodbye. Ivanov is doing just that. His sister Susan stops by to wish her big brother luck in the struggle to not get exterminated. In fact, she's so supportive she's planning to join up when she's old enough, which he's not really happy with, but when you're going into certain death, there's no need to finish with an argument, so she's giving him one of her earrings as an inside joke about good luck. They're all going to need that, because Londo informs Earth that their request to purchase weapons from the Centauri is being declined. As Londo puts it, no amount of money is worth the risk of angering the Minbari. The Narn don't agree. Jakar is here as well and offers to sell weapons based upon Centauri technology to Earth, meaning the Minbari will blame the Centauri if they ever tried to figure out who was supplying the weapons, which naturally Jakar loves to death. He's practically hoping the Minbari start capturing Earth ships. It'll be pricey. Seems that Earth bucks are no longer as valuable as they once were. Guess the Dow takes a hit whenever we're facing extermination. Meanwhile, Delenn is having some regrets about the madness that they've descended into with this war, with Lannan around to share his thoughts as the latest report comes in, that the warrior caste is compensating for their cowardice against the shadow threat by exterminating an enemy that has no chance against them, which this guy naturally takes offense to. Now, if you'll excuse me, he has to get back to Operation Who Has a Small Dick Now, huh? Lannan isn't just here to insult this guy, though. He's brought all of Dukat's stuff for her to look at. One of those things appears to be Kosh. Must have pulled the old hiding in a crate trick. Not like Kosh needs air holes or anything. Oh, and there's, Purple Dude. He doesn't introduce himself, so screw it. I'm not going to the internet to look it up just because he wants to be mysterious. Kosh is here to show a hologram of Dukat, who says that the Vorlons are here in secret to begin the preparations for the coming war, but that to prevail in such a war there's one thing we need. An unknown race called the humans. We need to somehow find them, and I can't emphasize this enough, not exterminate them. I repeat, don't wipe out every last one. We should be able to manage that without a problem. I just thought I'd mention that in case the warrior caste tries something, but I'm sure Delenn will make sure they don't do anything so stupid and pointless as to wage a war of genocide. Also, make sure none of those soul hunter assholes steal my soul, okay? It'd suck if they did. Lannan points out the obvious in the case it was missed. This war's got to stop, now, or we're only screwing ourselves. Back on Earth, Dr. Stephen Franklin enters the picture, showing off the latest hospital treatment, but is interrupted by one of the military head honchos. Seems that Dr. Franklin actually treated some Minbari once, and he's thorough. It's not like he just took a few notes about his efforts to help them. He had detailed autopsies, genetic profiles, the works. Stuff that could be used to create a biological weapon. Franklin still refuses the gentle order of, do what you're frickin' told, and is then arrested for disobeying orders, and his life is going to be turned upside down until they find those records. This is against the military code of justice, but it seems that that's on hold for the duration of the Holocaust. Meanwhile, Sheridan is about to make his mark on this war. He's still second in command of the Lexington, watching for this super Minbari cruiser that's supposedly so good that no one has survived to even confirm that it exists. As I said, this is full of spoilers, so if you're familiar with the show, yes, this is the point where Sheridan's reputation is defined, when he faced the flagship of the Minbari, the Black Star, and defeated it, earning the only victory in the entire war for the humans. The Minbari naturally despise him for that because they are little bitches. As Lannan said, the warrior caste likes winning and hates losing, so they have rationalized away their hatred for the Star Killer, as they call him, arguing that a true warrior would not have fought so dishonorably as he did. See, he did the shameful thing of luring the Black Star into an ambush where he then tried to destroy it. Obviously an act no self-respecting Minbari, never mind the cream of the warrior caste that's present on the Black Star, would ever dream of doing, right? Absolutely. So anyway, the Lexington finds a Minbari transport and sends Susan's brother out to follow it, and eventually the fleet follows, and then is blasted by the Black Star jumping in and ambushing them. An act of unparalleled courage and a demonstration of their genius and sense of honor with this ambush. During the fight, Ivanov is killed, the Lexington is severely damaged, and the captain is killed as well, leaving Sheridan in command. But while we pause while he considers how screwed they are, let's check in with the Minbari. Delenn and Lannan agree that the war has to be stopped soon, except she can't become involved. Acting independently of the Grey Council on this would only make things worse, and showing them the message from Dukat to understand why this war must end can't happen because... So, you can see why that's completely out of the question. It's obvious, right? Instead, she wants Lannan to make contact with the humans and try to open a dialogue, to work with the Narn to set up this meeting since everyone knows about their secret dealings with Earth. A meeting in neutral space will hopefully avoid any attempts to undermine this rendezvous and possibly be the first step in peace. Where did we leave off? Oh yes, Sheridan's up to his tits in it at the moment. The Lexington is so badly damaged the Minbari assumed that it was destroyed and left it, but as one of the officers points out, the Minbari will come back and finish them off if they try to send out a distress signal. The Minbari think that it's perfectly honorable to kill helpless people. Basically, I think we can safely conclude that the Minbari are those assholes who believe that if you beat them, you had to have cheated. There's no other explanation, and so your victory really doesn't count. Whereas anything they do, no matter how dishonorable it might seem, is awesome. Sheridan's plan is to take the warheads out of their tactical nukes and use them to create makeshift mines in the asteroid field. Once that's finished, they send out the distress signal, and sure enough, the Black Star is coming to destroy the helpless ship. Sheridan's plan turns the tables and blows it away. A real morale boost for everyone back home to see an actual victory. Command is ecstatic. Sheridan is the first real war hero they have. So, here's an idea. Let's throw him into harm's way on a mission that might be an ambush. That'll ride that momentum of that morale boost well, won't it? The specifics of the mission are that he is on the other side of this secret meeting. G'Kar is going to take Sheridan there to meet with Lanan, but of course they know that this might be a trick. Their reasoning in sending Sheridan is because he's proven he can handle himself with the Minbari. But unless he's hiding a nuke in his sock, I don't think that he's going to really have many options. We know why it is. Sheridan needs to have a larger role in this war for purposes of the story. But personally, I'm not buying that they would risk losing someone who has had such a strong effect on morale and has shown quick thinking in battle with the Minbari, or risk sabotaging the potential peace process by sending in someone they might want to get revenge on. Dr. Franklin's going along as well, having first-hand experience with the Minbari, a way also for him to get out of his sentence. That just leaves the question of how to talk with them.
Your contact has studied your language. Just in case, I will go along since I'm fluent in Minbari and English.
You're a real Renaissance man, G'Kar. I just hope fluent doesn't mean know enough to pick up chicks. You know what G'Kar's appetites are. Londo breaks in now to explain his earlier comment about how the war was his fault, explaining that he had orders to stop the Narn and the humans from developing closer ties. The Narn were still a threat to the Centauri after all, and Earth had made a name for itself against the Dilgar. And if they managed to prevail against the Minbari, well, obviously such an alliance could lead to a fundamental shift in the balance of power and leave the Centauri at the mercy of the Narn. The meeting takes place on an abandoned listening post, where G'Kar is nice enough to offer Sheridan a hiding place in case the human race is wiped out, which is a nice offer, but not really in the spirit of this meeting of peace thing. Sheridan declines. His plan is that if Earth goes, he goes. And speaking of going, he probably wishes he could right now when Lanan shows up holding Dr. Franklin at gunpoint. Luckily, Lanan knows some English, so we don't have to hear G'Kar say, "I have a 12-inch penis" in Minbari. Lanan explains that he knows who Sheridan is, what he did, but that he doesn't really care. He wants to work towards peace. Human, Minbari, and Narn, here right now, all working together towards peace. You know what would make it perfect? If the Centauri were here too. Okay, so we should have quit while we were ahead. The Centauri blast the listening post for good measure, leaving each side to assume that a renegade splinter of their own government was thwarting the effort at peace, rather than a case of a Centauri oopsie. Lanan is mortally wounded in the attack, but even as he's dying, he worries that this will only make the war worse, so he whispers something to Sheridan before he dies. Hopefully that'll work, because Delenn is not happy seeing Lanan's dead body brought in, and is ready to see these guys executed. But Sheridan keeps repeating, "I know what's in Dukat's sacred place." And that's the big difference between Babylon 5 and Deep Space Nine. Here, it's a sign of insight. On DS9, it's a sign you've learned something that you probably wished you didn't, probably involving handcuffs and farm animals. The answer is the future, and with that, Delenn lets them go. But this rare act of mercy isn't going to be duplicated again for a long time. The same thing you hear in Gul Dukat's sacred place before the sound of a whip and the honking of a goose. There's a moment when Londo discusses the view out the window there in the future. You know, the sign that they really need a fire department around here. But all he can really say is that everything he did for Centauri Prime. And yet, this is the result. Like the Earth at the start of this story, arrogance and a desire for even more greatness has turned around, and now the homeworld itself likewise pays the price. Humanity fought like a mofo trying to stop the Minbari, even resorting to suicide tactics in a montage that shows a falling race refusing to admit to being beaten, yet the outcome being undeniable.
I only hope that when it is my time, I may die with half as much dignity as I saw in their eyes at the end.
Important point, we're going to get to that later. The war waged a further 2 years until the President speaks to Earth announcing the fall of their forces and that the Minbari are now heading straight for Earth, refusing all communications and offers of surrender.
We therefore can only conclude that we stand at the twilight of the human race.
So I'd like to take this opportunity to say a few things. Yes, I did inhale, and I liked it, and I still do it, often right before meeting members of the public, because I can't stand you, you stupid, uncouth, unwashed mouth breathers. I am stunned your knuckles aren't callous from dragging them across the ground while you walk. Also, that reporter that called me fat, yeah, she's buried in a shallow grave in the Australian outback. When I'm frustrated, I crack hamsters in a nutcracker. Oh, also, I'm addicted to internet poker, and technically the moon is actually the property of the Pakmara, so if the Minbari shoot that, I just wish I could see the looks on their ugly tentacled faces when they find out what calling my busted flush cost them. This is when the Battle of the Line is set up, to buy time for transports to spirit as many humans away from Earth as possible, to then try and lie low throughout the galaxy away from the Minbari. They need people for what is effectively a suicide mission. On the other side, Delenn is lamenting that they're about to annihilate an entire race, one that, it should be noted, has tried to surrender. But the Great Council must assemble to view the final battle, and that means her too, even if she doesn't approve. She figures if they ever needed help from the Vorlons, it's now. So she talks to Kosh and Mr. Anonymous about it, saying that really, they're all so sick of this. Even the warriors on the Great Council, they're so sick. All they need is an excuse to stop fighting, and then they will. But until then, well, you know how it is. It's just, well, no, you probably don't. I mean, I doubt you ever committed genocide out of social embarrassment.
The truth points to itself.
What?
The truth points to itself.
What has two thumbs and doesn't give a crap? The truth! This is the Battle of the Line, and where Sinclair comes in, leading a squadron of Star Furies in this hopeless battle. This material with him is footage from previous episodes. Michael O'Hare was on the East Coast at the time, and it wasn't cost-effective to fly him out just to shoot a little bit for the show. Anyway, the Minbari drop out of hyperspace right on top of them and begin blasting them, taking out all of Sinclair's squad in moments. Pissed off, ship damaged, Sinclair sets a collision course with one of the Minbari ships. Only Delenn has suggested taking a human on board for questioning and picks Sinclair's ship. So before it strikes, the ship is grabbed and Sinclair brought on board for the anal probing. That's when shocking news happens. The triluminary that's been used to probe his mind glows in such a way suggesting that he has a Minbari soul, and that of the great Valen no less. Since Minbari cannot kill Minbari, this war needs to end. Except the people are going to need time before they're ready to learn of something that huge that Minbari souls are being reborn in humans. So, it's going to have to remain a secret. The Great Council will keep the details to themselves, of course. But that does still leave Sinclair, so the plan is to have a telepath remove the memory of this experience from his mind, and that afterwards, Delenn will watch him to ensure that he doesn't remember. That's why he has a missing 24-hour period, and why the Minbari are so secretive about what happened. But in the wake of the Minbari surrender and the chance to rebuild, the President returned to the airways for another announcement. Now that I'm free of the Minbari telepaths that forced me to say all those awful yet incredibly true things like the knuckle dragging, well, I want to announce that we're going to build a new station. Not a station for war, but for peace. And I can't imagine anyone being opposed to that. Well, they they'd get it to work after a while. If at first you don't succeed and all of that stuff. Lando finishes up by saying that Sheridan became president of a galactic alliance with Delenn at his side, and that there's always more story, this signifying the start of the new B5 run that in the beginning was launching on TNT. But Lando's final remarks make it clear that this is the future that we saw in War Without End. Tonight is the night that Lando will die, fitting in with his remark earlier that he hopes he meets his end well. He knows that it is coming. Actually, he's known this for a very long time, as we'll see next week when we continue with Babylon 5 with Midnight on the Firing Line. In the Beginning was in many ways not just a B5 movie, but a second pilot, a chance to reintroduce the show to the world thanks to the promotion that TNT gave it, and thus introducing people to that world with facts about the Centauri, Narn, Minbari, and the future of humanity, as well as introducing a number of characters. At the same time, it gave seasoned fans a chance to witness events that we had only heard about or seen through little snippets, rather than in this completion. So it's a little of column A and a little of column B, something to introduce the new viewers, though with limited success, more on that in a second, while still exciting veteran fans. The use of Lando as the framing device of the work is effective, his narration having kicked things off with The Gathering, now leading to him as this work's narrator. Something that a work like this really needed. The use of a narrator in this fashion took this collection of individual and often abbreviated stories and gave them a sense of overall unity, as well as carrying the emotional weight of the film. Indeed, I'm wondering if The Gathering, with its excess info dumping, might have benefited from something similar, to expand the narrator role in that. But this is just idle musing. In the Beginning had the benefit of both years of JMS's experience with crafting the show, plus having demonstrated the effectiveness of his novel in television form, allowing him to have a bit more freedom within the Beginning than he likely had for The Gathering. In fact, considering the overall technique, it's surprising that the film turned out as well as it did. The film reveals everyone's role during the conflict, but due to those numbers, many are given the short end of the stick. Ivanova, for instance, has a single scene, with a brother who dies as one of many nameless mooks, so she's just kind of this blip that appears and is gone. Or Sinclair, having no appearance unrelated to the battle, so it doesn't convey the importance of the character. Indeed, the story seems to unwittingly imply that he's just another nameless mook. It is rather surprising, given that we often have the mood left in the hands of the extras, rather than having the established characters of this, returning in the case of Ivanova, or introducing in the case of Sinclair. Though I understand the budget limitations in the latter case, it just simply wasn't practical. But my point is that those are things that push the film away from the new viewers because, without context, they just seem to be these story fragments. That's why I agree that this is really not the work to watch before The Gathering. It's best to view it between seasons 4 and 5, to allow your connection to the series to help fully appreciate the events that otherwise would feel incomplete. Because within context, it is far, far stronger for that. And these quibbles are not meant to suggest that the work isn't up to snuff. It's very enjoyable and effective. I'm just showing where I think there were areas to improve it for the benefit of new viewers, which is going to prove to be a substantial percentage of the audience thanks to TNT's relentless promotion. And of course, I'm speaking with the benefit of hindsight too. I mean, they had no way of knowing going in that such a large percentage of the audience would probably be people who had never seen B5 before. For someone who is a fan of the series, though, this was a chance to stop with the tantalizing scraps of this era and get a much larger, and yet often intimate, view of crucial events to the backstory of Babylon 5.
This is the seal of the Centauri Republic. Only the Emperor can wear it. So either I am the Emperor, or I am in a great deal of trouble. Or both.